Tom Cruise has been trying to kill himself while making Mission Impossible films for the past 30 years now, and the franchise has finally come to a head in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2. Wait, what? Okay. Tom Cruise has been trying to kill himself while making Mission Impossible films for the past 30 years now, and the franchise has finally come to a head in Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning, I guess. So I've been a fan of this series for a long time now, and my buddy and I rewatched all the movies leading up to it, and we went and saw this film in IMAX on opening night. This film is longer than any of the others in the series at almost 3 hours long, and this is like the Avengers Endgame, Deathly Hallows Part 2 culmination point of this franchise, and they wanted it to be as epic of a conclusion as humanly possible. And now that we finally, after 2 years of waiting, have the second part of the Dead Reckoning arc, even though we're pretending like Dead Reckoning Part 1 wasn't titled Dead Reckoning Part 1 and was just titled Dead Reckoning, but whatever, I can say this definitely wasn't worth the hype. It's not a bad movie, but considering every other film in the franchise, except 2, has been an epic, globe-trotting thrill ride with impressive stunts, unique gadgets, engaging stories, great character moments.
You're a miracle! Your stories have none of that!
This feels like the most anti-Mission Impossible movie. Like, there are 2 major set pieces in this film, the submarine and the biplane sequence. Both of them are really cool, but that's really it. Hardly any combat other than one sequence where there was a shootout and it was a good time and it really stood out. But there's no distinct use of gadgets that are new or inventive or really any gadgets at all, honestly, outside of one brief use of the masks. And man, the film is insanely dialogue heavy, but the dialogue is horrendous. I thought Dead Reckoning Part 1 was rough with all of its exposition dumping and cheapened performances, but this is a whole new level of bad.
Perhaps I treated you too harshly.
I kid you not, it just doesn't end, and when you compare it to the other films in this series, it feels so foreign, just from a script writing level. Christopher McQuarrie has directed the past 4 Mission Impossible films now, and he's written the past 4 of those films as well. But the Dead Reckoning arc has been co-written by Christopher McQuarrie and Eric Gendrison, and I don't know who this guy is or if he's the complication in this problem, but ever since he started writing Mission Impossible films, the dialogue has been really exposition heavy, you don't have a lot of great character moments, and overall, it just feels so much worse than the other ones. There are no character arcs, no moments where the film breathes, and absolutely no substance beneath this shallow surface. The plot to destroy the entity is continued from Dead Reckoning Part 1, but the beginning of the movie, for like the first hour or so, is just them re-explaining everything we already know about the entity multiple times, how it can be stopped, what it's gonna do, how much of a threat it is. Like, whatever happened to trusting your audience? You can give us a brief little rundown since it's been a couple of years, but geez, to reiterate over and over again from multiple different conversations, why are we doing this? We already saw the first part. We remember what it is. Can you just go?
Go!
Gabriel in this is significantly worse as an antagonist than he was in Dead Reckoning. The script doesn't really give Isai Morales much to work with outside of just giving him crappy dialogue and allowing him to really ham it up like he's a Super Friends villain. Like, he's somewhat featured in the first act, disappears for like an hour and a half, and then shows up in the third act to be a way more prominent figure than he has been at any other point in the film. That flashback of him killing that chick from Ethan's past is used here again, but is never expanded upon or explained. Still have no idea who this chick is, what she was doing, why she was there, why she was important to Gabriel and why he had to kill her, or why her actress was credited in the opening credits of Dead Reckoning Part 1. Like, Gabriel wasn't exactly a great villain in Dead Reckoning or anything like that, but he at least had a stronger thematic presence that is just completely gone in this movie. In Dead Reckoning, there was a ton of biblical themes interwoven into the story. Gabriel being described as the Dark Messiah, Entity being described as the anti-god, the key to unlock the potential of the entity being a cruciform key. Gabriel had this for the greater good mentality about him that is a darker, warped perception of what Jesus did for humanity. The Bible says that God loved the world so much that he sent his son to be crucified, and only Jesus knew he was destined for that cross to bear to save humanity from their sin. Gabriel, as an acolyte of the entity, was doing everything he could to get the cross-shaped keys because he was the only one who knew what it did and needed to, quote-unquote, help the world, or so he thought. In the Bible, Jesus tells Peter that before the rooster crows, Peter will have denied him 3 times, and in Dead Reckoning, Gabriel foretells Paris' defection from him, and unlike Jesus who forgives Peter, he tries to kill her. In here, he might as well just be one of those unnamed henchmen from a John Wick film. You know, the type that look really menacing and can handle themselves in combat, but you won't remember them once until you rewatch the movie again. You're like, oh yeah, that guy. Huh. They also introduce a lot of crazy stuff that the entity can do now that it's hacked the world's technology. Like at one point it's shown altering footage of security cameras and broadcast media. There's even a cult that starts because of what the entity's doing and they start praising it and everything. None of that matters. Like the footage altering thing, that never comes up again. The cult thing was basically just an easy way for them to, add tension to a scene by suddenly revealing that someone in the room is actually an entity sympathizer or whatever, and then that just presents a new opponent for Ethan to fight as he, engages in the next fight sequence. Getting back to the set pieces though, the submarine sequence where Ethan is navigating through it was very well done. They clearly had a practical set, and the claustrophobic environment just made it feel so much more tense. And even though Ethan is the only person on screen and there's absolutely no dialogue, and the scene is pretty freaking long, honestly, it was still really engaging and really fun to watch. Like eventually the set just starts spinning and then the water level keeps following where the actual gravity is pulling it and Tom Cruise is like hanging on for dear life. They just make it look so real. And if you see it in IMAX, the aspect ratio of the film actually expands as Ethan turns the valve to open the submarine hatch. I absolutely love that. The biplane sequence was so insane just because of how well hidden Tom Cruise's harness was. Like, I gotta assume, I'm pretty sure I saw footage, he's gotta be wearing, like, safety harness cables and everything so he doesn't, fly off and die. But I seriously couldn't point you to, like, oh yeah, they're clearly right there, they just painted them out. It literally looks like he's just holding on for dear life. And the fact that the man is in his 60s and able to pull this off is just all the more impressive. One of the biggest gripes I have with this film is its story structure and how isolated Ethan is from the rest of the team. Like, all the supporting IMF agents are so far removed from Ethan for a majority of the film, and it just sucks we didn't get to see them working together more often. Especially considering this is being marketed as the last of the franchise and could very well be the last time we ever see these characters again. And in the third act, Gabriel says something about like how Ethan's one weakness is his team because of how much he cares about them and how much they mean to him, and I just didn't feel anything in that moment. Like, it's supposed to be an impactful, powerful moment. But Ethan's team? Yeah, okay, I mean, you have Luther and you have Benji. We know those characters. We've been seeing them for the past several films. We've grown attached to them. But Haley Atwell, the random pickpocket that he's only known for 2 months at this point because she got involved in business that she had no business being involved in. Paris, the woman who tried to kill him until she randomly heel turned at the very end of Dead Reckoning and does nothing but skulk in the background and occasionally say something in French. One of the clandestine service agents who I swear is only in this film because Greg Tarzan Davis played Coyote in Top Gun Maverick. And then lastly, we have the one guy from the first movie who has absolutely no lines in there, but for whatever reason, if we're going to dig up any of the characters from the past films, we're going to pick him. Now, he and his wife, who has just been introduced in this film, are now super important and they're part of the team too. It was at this moment that I realized that this team isn't exactly a group of characters we've followed for years and have grown really attached to. It felt way more hollow than that. It reminded me of Rise of Skywalker, where just before C-3PO is about to get his mind wiped so he can translate the 6th holocron text or whatever it was, I don't know, that movie sucked. He says,
"Taking one last look, sir, at my friends."
He's not saying this to Luke, Leia, Han, and Lando. He's saying this about Rey, Finn, and Poe, who are all characters that had not earned that moment in the narrative from the audience. The editing of this film was absolutely abysmal. I don't think most shots in the first act lingered for more than a second. It was like watching a Cocomelon video. They keep intersplicing all these clips that were like flashbacks to the older movies, and they use and reuse them so freaking often, it just becomes like a greatest hits clip show at some point. I don't know about the rest of them. I'm sure they replayed plenty of them that just didn't stick out in my memory, but there's one shot in particular from MI3 where Ethan reaches in to grab the rabbit's foot. They played this clip, I kid you not, twice in like 90 seconds. Angela Bassett is now the president of the United States, and so there's a whole subplot with her and her cabinet, which features some pretty well-known actors such as Nick Offerman, Holt McCallany, I think I'm saying that right, and Janet McTeer. All great actors wasted in such meaningless roles that ate up a ton of time that we did not need to waste. There's also some subplots and reveals that I want to address in this movie, so if you don't want to know anything, and you don't want to have anything spoiled for you whatsoever, please skip to this time code in the video. And we are getting into spoilers in 3, 2, 1. You've been warned. Spoilers begin now. So they just casually drop this nugget of information that the Russians have a cruciform key this entire time. We don't ever see it. We don't ever get visual confirmation or proof of that. All of a sudden, Haley Atwell just kind of pieces that together and we're supposed to believe it. Why? How? Where did that come from? We never elaborate on that. It never comes up again. They just do that to add tension to the moment, I guess, and give the Russians a little bit of leverage over the IMF. And then that plot goes nowhere. So thanks for your manufactured tension. That means absolutely nothing. At one point, Ethan's given control of an aircraft carrier and has to bring in the naval officer in charge. I don't know what freaking term her title is or whatever. And he hands her a card that's sealed by Angela Bassett. And when she opens it up, the only thing on the card is the date, May 22nd, 1996. And my friend and I, we looked at each other like, oh, yeah, that's the release date of the first movie. And that's really all it is, because there is some subtextual meaning for these characters. We don't ever find out what it is. All of a sudden, this Neely character, as she's called, says to Ethan, you and I both lost someone we loved that day.
What? When? Where? And why?
Who knows? It's a reference. But seriously, they don't ever try to connect that to the flashback of Gabriel killing that woman. Maybe that was her sister. Maybe that was her, best friend. Maybe that was, Ethan's former girlfriend, and that's how they... I honestly have no idea. They never explain it. Shea Wiggum's character in this is so stupid because for whatever reason, they decide to retcon the fact that his character Riggs, his real name is Jim Phelps, named after Jim Phelps, his father.
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
What the hell's going on?
Exactly.
Right.
So this random dude who just showed up in Dead Reckoning Part 1 is the son of Jon Voight's character in the first Mission Impossible movie. Why? I kid you not, I just held my face in my hands at that point because of how unnecessary and out of pocket that reveal was. Great. So what? I mean, we haven't even thought about Jon Voight since he blew up in a helicopter in 1996. As for Luther, it sucks seeing him die, but I kind of had a feeling they were going to do it anyway. And so when all of a sudden we see him in some kind of medical tent and he's dressed in scrubs and got gloves on and all that stuff, and then they got the oxygen hose on his nose, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. What the heck? In the 2 months between Dead Reckoning and Final Reckoning, he just develops some unknown, unnamed illness and is on death's door because of it. And that's not even what takes him out, but rather a friggin' nuke. So what was the point of any of that? Well, technically not a nuke, but he was able to shrink down the explosion of the nuke, so it just blew up the tunnel system. Whatever, it was a bomb. But geez, that final interaction between Ethan and Luther would have hit so much harder had it not been just pure exposition the entire time. Seriously, Tom Cruise's lines felt like they were being read by a narrator for a children's book who was trying to explain to the audience everything that was happening, when we are smart enough to figure out what's going on here. No human beings interact like this. Just saying. Watching him run out of the tunnel as it exploded and collapsed, I gotta admit that did hurt, because Luther was one of, if not my favorite character in the Mission Impossible franchise, and yeah, it got me. Just kind of wish that Tom Cruise could have shown off a little bit more emotional acting chops as he escaped. Like, imagine if he just got to a minimum safe distance and then immediately buckled and then just started crying or something. I don't know. I thought that would have been a little bit more of a nice additional emotional touch, because if there's one thing this movie needed more than anything else, it was emotional resonance. The ending felt a little too safe with absolutely no one else dying. Like, Benji catches a stray bullet, collapses his lung, and starts suffocating. Survives. Langley, his old lady, and Coyote from Top Gun have 10 seconds to run 100 yards to the server room so they can outrun an explosion. Survives. Ethan jumps out of a busted plane with a parachute, opens the parachute burns, now he starts free falling. Survives. The only one who didn't was freaking Gabriel, who, like a Looney Tunes character, dies by splitting his head open on the tail of the plane. And it was so cartoonish that when it happened, the theater I was with, everyone started freaking laughing, and I don't get the feeling that a moment like that should have been quite so jovial. Overall, I don't hate this film, but man, was I disappointed by it. For a movie paying off a 2-year cliffhanger and closing out a franchise that's been running for almost 30 years and is one of the most well-recognized action movie series of all time, this as a finale felt really flat and also just doesn't seem to have nearly as much rewatchability as any of the others in the series. Certainly is still better than MI2, but that's not saying much considering how bad that movie is. And also, if we're really looking at the ranking of how I'd order this movie series best to worst, I would easily put this in second to last place. And as for a score of 10, I guess I'm just gonna say a 6. I know I seemed pretty negative about this while I was chronicling everything wrong with it, but for the most part, I liked it. I guess I didn't love it. I wanted to love it and I didn't. I know I came off really negative with my analysis only to give it a somewhat positive score, but in the realm of being just fine for a Mission Impossible film, that's not really a good thing or something you should ever be striving for, let alone in your series finale. But I want to know, have you seen Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning? What did you think about it? Do you think they should have just kept the Dead Reckoning Part 2 title? Was this a stupid rebrand that meant absolutely nothing? Was this a good film? Was this a bad film? Was it the best of the series? Was it the worst of the series? How does it rank? How would you rank the series overall? I would love to hear what you have to say down in the comments, but if you disagree with someone, don't be a jerk about it. This is just a movie after all, not the most important thing in the world. If you want to support the channel, you can like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you know when I'm uploading. And if you want more from me that isn't just YouTube exclusive, I have 4 links in the description down below. They'll take you to plenty of other social media platforms where I post reviews that don't always make it onto this channel, and the ones that I do post on this channel, I always post on those sites long before I edit together a video. So be sure to check that out, and until next time, guys, God be with you, and take care.